There will never be an atheist morality.
That's true, but not for the reasons this chucklehead thinks. Let's do this.
Round one, fight!
Delusion!
Logic boo! Logic boo!
You win!
Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. I want to apologize for not having the green screen up. I'm still not quite awake, and it's a lot of work to do. And even after pounding a Red Bull, I'm now both tired and hyper, which seems a contradiction until it happens to you. Anyway, morality. Definitely in the top 3 when it comes to arguments between atheists and theists, am I right?
Now, before I go further, I must clarify what I am not saying. I am not saying that atheists are necessarily immoral, or more so than any random religious person. An atheist society, well, that I have serious doubts about. The historical record is not good.
This is not just one, but 2 mistakes you'll see theists make a lot. First is the idea that there is such a thing as an atheist society. There can be secular societies where there is at least supposed to be a separation of church and state. But atheism has no doctrine or dogma. It's not like a religion. It doesn't perform the same function as religion. Atheism is the absence of religion, not a replacement for it. Second, acting like religious societies haven't performed their own atrocities and did it in the name of their God, fulfilling a religious commandment or mandate, which is not possible for atheism as it has and makes neither. Stop doing that. It makes you look ignorant, illogical, and dishonest.
What I am saying, though, is not only is there not now a coherent atheist morality, there never will be.
That's true. Because again, atheism is not a replacement for religion. I know this is difficult for theists to wrap their minds around. Religion is often so ingrained into those who are religious that picturing anyone living without a worldview that pervades nearly every aspect of life must be a challenge. But again, being an atheist isn't even like being religious, and so expecting a unified atheistic morality fundamentally misunderstands atheism about as badly as anyone could.
Atheists don't have a distinct moral code of their own, but generally borrow that of the religious society they come from, often filing off the bits they find personally inconvenient.
Or the bits that are actually quite repugnant, archaic, misogynistic, homophobic, etc. Religious morality is often quite thoroughly immoral. And also, what arrogance to assume not only that atheists get their morality from religion, but from just one religion, when we in the US at least are surrounded by not merely one religion, but enough denominations of several religions, each filing off bits of their own religious morality that they find inconvenient. And assuming that we cannot figure out morality without you, and that your religious morality is somehow the quote-unquote correct morality, is quite thoroughly arrogant to say the least.
Thus, an atheist from a Christian culture would be recognizably different from an atheist from a Buddhist or a Muslim culture.
And so are things like table manners, slang, gestures, clothing, etc., which don't depend on religion necessarily. Take, for example, food. In the US, if you clean your plate, indeed, if you eat far more than you ought, the chef will usually take it as an indication of the food's superior quality. However, in some Asian cultures, you should leave some food on your plate to indicate that you were provided with more than you needed. If you clean your plate, you're saying that your host was being stingy. Is that religious? Or just cultural? Is it morality or just manners? Is there really a difference? What's morality for, anyway? Ask an atheist and they'll likely tell you that it's there to be nice to each other, to keep things civil and without hurt, resentment, or violence. You might ask why we even care about that, to which I'd have to ask, don't you like it when your life is more pleasant rather than less? Ask a theist, and they're likely as not to say that it honors God, and the actual people are a secondary concern, really.
But there will never be a distinct, recognizable atheist morality, and the reason is fairly simple. You see, as I covered in another video, we don't learn morality through reason and logic. We can reason about morality, but our bone-deep moral sense does not come from that. Think about it. If you have to reason a man to the conclusion that stealing someone else's property or assaulting an innocent is wrong, you've already lost.
Huh? Our deep down instincts are not exactly all sweetness and light, you know. If they were, nobody would put their preschoolers in a corner because they would never be misbehaving. A lot of our instincts are selfishness and violent reactions to fear or to being slighted, the very things we so often call immoral. It's often reason that stops us from being awful people when emotions, instinct, would have us behaving in ways we wouldn't tolerate from others.
Morality has to be deeper than mere logic, or else it simply will not hold against the convenience of the moment.
What's funny is that I would totally reverse this. It's emotion that is mere, while logic is more.
So, well-reasoned treatises about morality will not create and sustain a moral system, although they may be useful in refining it.
That logical refining is necessary. Without it, any moral system will be as hurtful as it is helpful. Indeed, one might say that without logic, we'd be quite frequently immoral.
Where does our sense of morality come from?
2 places: empathy and the desire to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. And possibly Hoboken, but I'm not sure.
From stories. That's why a good story can move us so much, and that's why storytellers are the secret legislators of the world.
Really? Stories. Well, let me ask you this. Where'd the stories come from, huh? Someone, wrote them. Where'd they get that inspiration? If we're going to be quoting famous people, as this guy will in a moment, then Dostoevsky said that art imitates life, and I agree, despite Oscar Wilde's protests to the contrary. Those stories were written from the perspective of people's life experience. They describe, not dictate.
C.S. Lewis said that imagination is the organ of meaning. And we humans need meaning. We are not mere animals who need just food, water, and shelter. We are not mere computers that process data.
Wow, this guy has a real hard-on for the word mere, doesn't he? I actually feel a certain amount of mean-spirited amusement when people, usually theists, get offended at the notion that humans aren't somehow really super-duper-ooper special, above all others. I believe S.J. Thomason recently had herself a bit of a tantrum over calling humans animals, that it was unflattering, even insulting. And yet these are the people who make a huge deal out of being humble and how unworthy they are. I think I can be forgiven for finding their self-contradiction amusing, though. They're doing it to themselves, after all.
We need meaning, and this is especially true if we are to make moral decisions, doing the right thing even when it costs us.
Now, what on earth makes you think that there is a right thing? If, as he says, people's morals will vary based on the culture in which they were brought up, and goodness knows those cultures don't all agree on what is and isn't moral, then it stands to reason that the so-called right thing is very much a matter of opinion and perspective, and is probably dependent upon circumstances. Morality is rarely one size fits all. This should at least suggest that morality is subjective, that a right thing only exists as we define it for ourselves.
And if we are not fed a steady diet of healthy stories, our morality will be warped and unable to contend with our baser impulses.
Citation needed. Justify that statement.
Theoretically, atheists could deliberately create a set of stories to convey their moral code.
If he means that individual atheists can do this, then yes. But again, atheism isn't a religion and isn't like a religion, and there is no atheist moral code. There isn't even a secular moral code. There are moral statements which are entirely secular in nature, but it's not a list of commandments like you'll find in a religion. There's no doctrine or dogma, and if you're gonna go looking for one, you don't understand atheism at all.
They could collect and codify a set of such stories. Of course, if they were well-written stories, full of real humanity and not cheap propaganda, they'd have inconsistencies and apparent contradictions. they'd be complex and not always have the expected outcome. They might be quite ambiguous at times.
Nope, nope, nope. I just got a new shipment. I can't waste them all on this chowderhead. Irony meters are expensive, you know, and I don't have nearly enough Patreon patrons to justify using them on every dregs-brained loony who comes across my internet.
And let's say a group of atheists did this. You know what you'd have then? You'd just have another religion.
Everybody cover your ears, because the resonance of the collective facepalm we are about to experience from every atheist watching this video will approximate that of an atomic blast. Morals are not a religion. A code of conduct is not a religion. See these rules for a swimming pool? They exist for the same reason as morality, making sure people don't end up having a bad day at the hands of others. You might even say that, in the Codex of Swimming, this is the list of moral commandments. Would you call that a religion? I don't think you could reasonably find anybody who would call that a religion. Is the lifeguard a priest? Is using the diving board a form of self-baptism? Is holding your nose like crossing yourself? Is a bikini a holy vestment? Okay, I'm flexible on that last one. But still, a codified morality is not a fucking religion.
It might be a religion with no God, and so technically atheist, but it would be a religion, and over time would develop all of the same characteristics that smug atheists so love to deride in religions and religious people.
I see. So a codified code of conduct will lead to science denial, homophobia, misogyny, illogic and unreason, genital mutilation, shunning of apostates, and fighting wars against those who refuse to be assimilated into the collective. Right. Okay.
And that is why I say there will never be an atheist morality.
Okay. If that's what floats your ducky, go ahead and say it. I mean, if this video doesn't convince you of your errors, I'm not sure what else will, so say it. So before I go a little bit of business, you may have noticed that it's been a while between videos, and part of that was just I was burning out a little and needed a break, but also part of it was that my neighbors started doing renovation, and the noise was literally shaking my apartment. My poor kitty was absolutely terrified, and so I just couldn't make a video with the amount of silence I need to properly use a mic. Another reason is that there's just not a lot out there to respond to. People have started moving more and more to the podcast format with these hours-long videos out there. And other people are either saying things to which I've responded 1,000 times, or they're so unscripted, rambling little rants that there's just not a lot to actually work with. And so because of that delay between videos, I made a boo-boo. Namely that some people did send me some stuff through the holiday season, and I've completely mislaid all of the names of the people to whom I'm supposed to say thanks. I know there was like an Amazon gift card at one point and all this stuff, and I feel like shit for it, because you know I like to thank people properly, and it always kind of like, well, it's a little uncomfortable when someone sends me something and there's no note and I don't know who to thank, and now I've gone and done it to myself and I feel like crap. I'm sorry. Whoever you were, I'm completely sorry. Anyway, until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Religion is often so ingrained into those who are religious, picturing... Don't. Ask an atheist. Oh. If we're going to be quoting famous people, as this guy will in a moment, then Dostoevsky. Dewey, what the hell are you doing? Get out of the way!
Sandra, this isn't right. There has to be a better way to make money than taking these assassination contracts.
Like what? What do you have in mind?
Well, have you ever considered Patreon?
Patreon? Where people donate money for those videos I'm in? Do you really think that'll pay the bills, Dewey?
Well, if people want to prevent a few international incidents, I'm sure they'll be willing to contribute. After all, what's $1 or $2 per video to forestall the occasional war, right?
Well, I suppose I could give it a try. You'd better be right about this.
Come on, Sandra, let's go home. Sandra!
What? He was right there. I'll start that Patreon thing tomorrow. Promise. Vote me down and I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.